On July 28th of 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. This is generally attributed to the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. The problem is, the reality was, all of that assassination had been settled for the most part. There was one or two minor little details. Serbia had agreed to about everything. When Germany got into the war and decided to attack France, they crossed Belgium. Belgium was neutral, and Germany had an agreement with them. But the Chancellor and others in Germany said, well, we'll make this right after the war. We'll make it up to them. Yes, we shouldn't be doing this. But they did it anyway. If you've ever read any history on World War I, as you've watched my videos, you know I'm a bit of a serious student of history. World War I was expected by just about everybody at the time. But before it broke out, everybody knew it was a bad idea. So the consensus among the nation's rulers, who were almost all related, familial, first, second cousins at most, it still happened. By the end of it in 1918, 40 million people were dead. In 2010, almost 100 years later, the Stuxnet virus was discovered. Now, to this day, nobody's quite sure who created this virus, but most have a pretty good idea. The virus was large. It was big code. It was complex code. And it was specifically targeted to PLCs, which controlled, they're called programmable logic controllers, which controlled Iran's nuclear centrifuges. Iran's nuclear program at the time was probably one of the most highly secure installations and programs on the planet, and certainly it was in Iran. Yet the virus was successful. It put back the Iranian nuclear program by estimates run for about 2 years. This was before AI was so ubiquitous and widely available. And from history, we can take these two events and put them in context today. I did a video before about, is AI really that scary? And a lot of it was AI taking over the world. And I suggested it's not. But that doesn't mean there aren't real risks. I've spent a lot of time on this one trying to figure out exactly what the biggest risks and the most likely outcomes were for AI that gets bad. There are two that I've come up with. One is AI goes rogue. It does something, it makes a decision and causes problems to multiply, to become very widespread very quickly. And we'll get to that one in the second part of this two-part series of why there are real concerns about AI. The first one, I would say, is not only the most likely, there's probably not a 99% chance. I think it's certainly going to happen. And that is, a nation will use AI to create a virus that makes Stuxnet look pretty tame in comparison. And it may not even be intentional. When wars happen, as soon as it starts, both sides believe they're going to win. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been in it in the first place. This is a relatively historical norm. There are cases where one big nation attacks a smaller nation. The smaller nation knows it's going to lose, but fights to the very end, hoping that it can at least wear the bigger nation out. Those are pretty rare. But smaller nations who have some power, militarily speaking, or intelligence, think of it as North Korea. But it could be Iran. It could be Venezuela, who want a seat at the world stage and know they can't do it militarily. So they could and will. This will happen. The history is pretty clear on this. Something that can go wrong will go wrong, and tools that can be used to generate or strengthen the power of rulers will be utilized. That's why we dropped a nuclear weapon on Japan. There can be all kind of excuses of why we did it, and all kind of reasons. They may be true. It may have saved American lives. It probably did. But what AI has done is given a tool to smaller nations that is equal or better than the tools that bigger nations have. It's just, will they use it? Well, history suggests they certainly will. So how will this manifest itself? I think the most likely scenario is about the most likely scenario that goes back to if AI starts making bad decisions on the power grid. There's a squirrel falls into a wire, shuts down a power station. It cascades because it's very hot in California. Pretty soon, people in Ohio are without power. This happened too because the system saw that it needed to shut certain things down. AI will always make its decision based on the available data. It could see a decision that says, if I shut these 3 down, everything will be maintained, and it could be wrong. Or human beings could intervene on that. And another area before the AI makes its decision or after, thinking things are in the clear and make it worse. But the Rogue Nation virus is much more serious a threat, way more likely to happen, and this is IT management. You should probably have a serious plan for this now. So how would this manifest itself? If we go back to not just Stuxnet, but and World War I, it could be and will be a nation knows that it can create this virus, and they've been working on it for a few years, and AI is starting to really help. So they create this virus that has a 0-day exploit, meaning no one sees this coming. The window's open where the vulnerability is there, but it hasn't been patched yet. I'm going to link to a documentary again below for you on this that I think you'll really like. And then they sit on it for a couple months, and they're making decisions, and there's a black swan event. Something happens, and they feel backed into a corner. So the virus is released. And they're almost sure it's going to be contained, and it will just attack United States or Western Europe infrastructure. But it doesn't work like they think it will, or their intentions were to wipe the whole thing out anyway, and they'll be left with at least the money, the treasure, and the people that they have in their nation without firing a single shot. If this happens, it's no different than what I've called clickbait, and they are, and some of the scary stories you see on AI. If the communications and power are down, even for a short period of time, the ability to recover from it grows longer and rarer to be successful. You have less and less chance to be successful because the only places you can work are places with isolated power. Well, those places are probably going to be hospitals, government institutions, but now how do we get the people there? The programmers who could fight this, the infrastructure people who could start to detach from the network to stop the thing from spreading. Okay, well, so we could drive out to them, call them up, but the communications will be down. You'll have to go looking for them. It could take months or years to get all the people together to mitigate the damage that's been caused and find out what's causing the problem in the first place. This is one that is it likely in the next year or two? Not without a black swan event, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. And I don't want to do the fear mongering. That's what I did in the other video, that I think AI going bad and rogue is a lot less likely. Everybody who would be working on that AI that would manage the power infrastructure would know if this isn't perfect, and it won't be, we better be able to mitigate the damage quickly. But a rogue nation creating this may have no interest in mitigating the damage. The horror of this is it's probably not that hard at this point. Again, Stuxnet is at least 15 years old now. So what will happen if this rogue nation does this? We might even know who it was. You still won't be able to do anything. So it starts to present an opportunity for some of the crazies in the world that do get into power, into positions of very high power and decision making, that they could justify this in the exact same way Germany justified going through Belgium to France, despite Belgium being neutral. This is one that I think has another layer to it as well. You've seen all the scams that get run from nations of sending people what are really convincing looking emails, or the viruses that come from small groups. Now those small groups have a tool available to them where they could analyze every virus ever created. They could analyze Stuxnet, how it worked. It could be a ransom thing where they shut down not a building, not one business, and demand Bitcoin. They shut down an entire region. They shut down an entire nation, multiple nations. That one I think is a little bit less likely than a foreign power, but both of them are distinct possibilities. But there's something that's even more likely, and I think also this is now a certainty. Let's suppose we look back at the viruses we've had before, like My Doom. We've seen viruses before that shut down businesses for a couple days, even a couple weeks. We fight through them, we clean up the virus, and after a little bit of time, most companies are back in business. There are some that fail. Again, what we're talking about here is not AI taking over the world. This is a malicious actor using AI to either ransomware, cryptolock, or something like that, or get information, or a nation trying to slow down an economy enough where it seems like they're not really doing it. Now imagine this AI virus is like nothing we've ever seen before. Thousands of businesses are affected, thousands of websites, but the power's on and the cell phones work. After 2 weeks of fighting this, though, and thousands, tens of thousands of businesses, meaning millions of people, are affected, we're not having success. It's out there and it keeps replicating, keeps coming back. After 2 weeks of fighting it, the government does a COVID-style lockdown. It says we need to get control of this. All businesses are closed for 2 weeks. Food distribution, food growing, hospitals, healthcare, gasoline and power, and law enforcement. That's it. If you're not doing that, you're not working. And if you're a business that tries to skirt that a little bit, you're in big trouble. They tell you you're going to be arrested. You're down for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, the government works on it, realizes we still can't find it. We have to let people go back to work. But you cannot use the internet. You have to use cell phones or the good old-fashioned United States Postal Service to communicate with your customers. Okay, how many of you right now have all of your backups in the cloud somewhere? Almost every small business I consult with, and small, 50, 60 million, up to 100, 120, they're in that boat. This is kind of a funny thing because the smaller businesses that I work with from time to time that may do $3 or $4 million, they have QuickBooks or some accounting back office systems. They're still on-prem and their backup's on-prem. In a situation like this, they could do quite well. They're still going to have communications issues. They're not going to have email. They're not going to be able to research things. And they may not be able to pull data from customers. The company I work with right now, we're doing a lot of big business, Walmart, Kroger, Target. All of our data comes from the internet in one form or the other. So if this happens, then you have some small companies that all of a sudden are really big because they went from 5 or 10 million, but the $100 million competitors that they had are all still down trying to bring everything together. So it starts to funnel. It starts to break down. And half the companies maybe fail, half of them succeed or survive, let's say. But survival at a time like that, it's like I read once in the Great Depression, if you have cash, a lot of cash, depressions are the best times of your life. You can buy anything. Well, if your business survives this, you're going to grow. But what if you work for a company that isn't able to get your data back without the internet? You can't operate. If this is, as I believe it will be, probably close to half the companies have no AI disaster recovery plan right now. It's not just all these business owners that go out of business and shutter. All the people that work there are now out of a job. So the unemployment rate's not a terrifying 20%. It's a devastating 50, 60%. There's nowhere for them to work. The companies that did survive maybe are hiring some of them, but they can't scale that quickly. Now you have a society where half of the people are out of work, and of them, half of them are hungry. This leads to what's called bread riots. In a bread riot, you can have 500 people facing with no weapons. 500 people, no weapons, just their hands and some rocks and sticks, facing 50 soldiers with high-powered rifles. The 500 people don't care. It's when you're starving to death, death itself is the sweet release. So this seems like a doomsayer, and again, it's not. This is not AI taking over the world. This is a new virus that comes out that was created with AI, and we can't, it's so well done, we can't really find out where it is. Everything's unplugged from the internet. Could your business survive that? Probably not. Could you? Would your job still be intact? Do you have a plan to prepare for something like that? Probably not. The funny thing here is this, again, is not like I said with the big AI disaster with the laser beams hitting you in the head. No, you just have no money, no food, no job, and no way to get those things anytime soon. The end result is the exact same thing. It doesn't take AI figuring out through your vacuum cleaner that it can control NORAD to kill us all. In 2 or 3 months, we would find out that a lot of these small businesses that we don't think too much of are mission critical to our everyday survival. And it's not just the guys that we depend on that we don't see, the guys that keep your sewer system and plumbing running underground, the linesmen fixing things. There's a lot of companies that support these guys. A very small, would at first seem like just another virus, but this one's a bad one. If it's created with AI, if it's dynamic code that builds it, meaning even if you destroy it, there are pieces of it that you didn't see that recombine and launch the virus again, I don't think it's that difficult to see a scenario where we have to detach from the internet. Do you and your business have even one computer that's not connected to the internet? Probably not. How do you survive that? Again, I'm trying not to be too scary here, but there are things we should be prepared for. There are things that could and will happen. And it's called we don't know what we don't know. When these happen, again, it's not going to be some big disaster. It could be a small thing that is simply we're unable to contain and control it. Okay, so when we get to the second part, we're going to go back to a little bit of rogue AI and how there are things that could spin out of hand there as well. And after this, I think what we should also do, I've only done a couple of these because I found that the companies that I've consulted with, only one really even thought that it was necessary. Should you have a completely separate, distinct disaster recovery plan for AI? Thanks again for watching.